video was not on my schedule. I was gonna drop a different video this week, but there has been some developments related to this coronavirus pandemic in the last few days that low-key triggered me. There has been a new meme around the internet making fun of the fact that this virus especially affects old people. Now, I understand it's just a meme. Memes don't kill people, viruses kill people, incompetent orange-looking boomers in government kill people, but not memes. I get that. At the same time though, I think it's important to point out that the people spreading this meme are usually the same people that flip their lids every time someone makes a joke about a minority, because in that case, then words are literal violence. But whatever, I'm not even gonna talk about this blatant hypocrisy. And to all of you who are about to comment, okay boomer, just stop. First, that's already an old tired meme because it was ridiculously overused. Second, calling me a boomer. Are you for real? I'm a trans woman in my early 30s who grew up on Harry Potter, listens to Lana Del Rey all day, would never have my own house because all my paycheck goes on soy lattes and bagels. Best $12 ever spent. And paying the huge debt for my 2 completely useless degrees in humanities, and then I blame old people for all these poor life choices because then I don't have to assume any responsibility for them. So boomer, moi, bitch, I'm like peak hipster. And even so, I can sympathize with the boomers on this one because this pandemic is serious. Now, the fact that it's serious, it doesn't mean that you have to panic. It doesn't mean that you have to buy stock of toilet paper for a whole year. It's really unnecessary. You don't have to do any of that. But the lockdown measures are important and they need to be put in place because this is a novel virus. We don't have any vaccine for it. The only thing that we can count on to fight the virus if you get infected is your own immunity system. And people who are old or have respiratory problems like asthma, their bodies will struggle more in fighting against this virus. So since there is no vaccine, the only measurements to take in place are measurements to try to contain the spread of the virus. This virus in particular, the scariest thing about it is that it spreads extremely quickly. So even if the mortality rate is low, the number of deaths that could be caused by this virus could be extremely high because of the potential number of people that could get infected. A lot of people have been comparing this to the influenza pandemic in 1918 that killed between 20 and 50 million people. Now, it's a similar scenario because that was also a virus that spread very easily and infected about 1/3 of the global population. Now, the death rate in that case is estimated between 2 and 6%. It really depends on the number of people that were infected, which is all estimations. We don't know for sure. But it's likely that this virus now is less deadly. But the population now is much larger. We have now, instead of 1.9 billion that we had in 1918, there is now 7.8 billion people in the world. So the number of deaths could be the same or even higher despite the less fatality rate for this virus. If we do nothing to contain this virus, and this is a virus that, as I said, spread extremely easily, let's imagine a scenario where everybody gets infected. In a hypothetical scenario where 100% of the population is infected by this virus, with a death rate of 3.5% on people above 60 years of age, you would have about 1.8 million deaths in America and 3.5 million deaths in the European Union. So that alone is about 5 million dead. Now, it's very unlikely that you're going to have 100% of the population infected, so we can think of a more realistic scenario, like 1/3 of the population as it was in 1918. Now, if we have, hypothetically, 1/3 of humanity exposed to this virus with a death rate, average death rate of 2%, we're gonna have about 50 million dead. Now, when there is an outbreak like this, there are 2 main measurements to take in order to contain the spread of the virus. There are mitigation measurements and suppression measurements. And one of the criticisms to the suppression measurements that have been put in place recently is, oh, why don't they just isolate old people? People who are at risk. Well, that was the strategy until recently. That was the mitigation strategy that was put in place. Self-quarantine for people who are traveling, self-quarantine for people who are older. However, a study that was put out about a week ago by the Imperial College of London showed that these measurements are not going to be effective. Now, this study looks at the scenarios in the UK, but it could be applied everywhere. The problem here is that The healthcare system is simply not prepared to deal with a pandemic like this. Since this virus spread so easily, you're gonna have a lot of people getting infected and they're gonna need hospitalization. And there are not enough beds in hospitals to treat everyone. And another important factor, here in the Southern Hemisphere, we are getting into winter soon. And then you're also gonna have seasonal flu. And people with seasonal flu also need hospitalization. So you have these two things combined that will put even more pressure in the healthcare system. So what this study has shown is that if we take suppression measurements, that is closing down schools and universities, population-wide house quarantine, and social distancing, that will ease the burden on the healthcare system. Now, yes, it sucks that all your springtime vacation plans are ruined. It sucks that we have most of our shifts at work cut. Now, my work is related to the university sector. I had a lot of hours cut, and yeah, it absolutely sucks. And of course, also sucks that social distancing pretty much makes us all incels now, but that is how life is going to be for the next months, and there will be a huge impact in the economy. The Australian government already put out a package to try to mitigate the economic slowdown that will absolutely happen during this time, because these suppression measurements are necessary. In order to stop the spread of the virus, we have to do this. There is no other way. The study also showed that if you do it for a long period of time, let's say it's 5 months, and then you release them, you're gonna have the same problem anyway. So the suppression measurements are only effective if we keep doing until we have a vaccine. Of course, we can't keep everything closed and social distancing for a period of 2 years. That's not gonna happen. So the recommendation is to do it at intervals. Now, do it for a couple of months and then relax, and then do it again after a couple of months for the period until we get a vaccine. And yeah, it absolutely sucks, but it will suck more if we don't do our part and help the virus spreading by not taking the precautions that are necessary. Keeping the boomers at home and living about life normally was not helping. It was not resolving the problem, because the virus was transmitting from household to household and they were still getting infected. But even if it's hard, there is no reason to be upset about it. It would of course be easier if we go through this together instead of dividing each other over bullshit shit like your generation, which is stupid. Because don't forget, we millennials are the boomers of tomorrow, and how we treat our elders now is gonna have an influence on how young generations are gonna treat us when we are the old people. Now, I understand that you want to go through the situation with humor and make jokes about it. I get it. And if you want to do edgy memes to piss off the boomers, fine, whatever, take it out of your system. Nobody can stop you, but do it at home. I've been Michel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.